Okay, everybody. Everybody's rolling in. And as you're rolling in, I just want to welcome you to the Creative Capital Table, where we really just have intimate, but vulnerable and just authentic conversations about new alternative ways to provide capital to undercapitalized entrepreneurs. And by the way, when you're thinking of undercapitalized entrepreneurs, keep in mind that 83% of entrepreneurs do not receive traditional debt or traditional VC backed equity capital, but they still make things happen. Some of your favorite businesses got started without VC. Some of our wonderful investments in the stock market that we look at, tried and true and blue, got started without VC. And so we really want to talk about how do we be more creative and innovative around that. So I'm excited to have everybody here. As you're coming in, please drop, where you're from. You can put city, you can put state, but certainly include the organization that you're representing today. The format for today is we're going to start with an amazing guest, Jill Johnson from IFEL. You guys are going to learn not only about how she founded this organization with her father, but their recent acquisition of Pipeline Angels, and then more importantly, how Jill and IFEL have really looked at community as capital and really built solidarity and trust networks into their training program for angels, but also into making sure that those angels deploy capital into the communities that they're actually located in or communities of interest, that they care about. And then we have an opportunity for you all as guests to join us in the second half of this podcast. You could join us live on stage, quotation mark stage. And so if you would like to do that, if you look on your bottom of your screen, you're going to see a Q&A box, and you just click that Q&A box. You can put your question in there, but if you want to actually join as a panelist, then go ahead and put hyphen panelist, to let us know that you want to join. Now, the only thing about joining as a panelist is we want you all to look your camera best, okay? So just know that cameras have to be on, and make sure you have some good lighting as well. But everybody, I'm sure, has a beautiful, handsome face, so don't worry anything about that. But just make sure your camera's on and you have good lighting so that we can see what we're kind of engaging with as you as an individual. And so I just want to reemphasize that InBIA, we started this live podcast series, Creative Capital Table, because we wanted to spread more information about creative capital sources and provide a community of practice for those who are building creative capital pools and tools to connect and to have dialogue. And somewhere in this podcast, during our intermission, we'll have Charles Ross, which is a director of the InBIA, come up and really talk to you more about the organization itself and how you can get involved, not just in creative capital, but in all that we're doing. And of course, we have a conference coming up in Chicago, and it's right around the corner. And Charles is going to hit on that as well. An amazing conference. We'll be hitting topics from, again, creative capital, but also is a conference for ESOs, those who have organizations that support entrepreneurs, to learn about how to get funding for their own organization, to learn about best practices from others, to learn about other ecosystems and what they're doing, and to share likewise so that we can build as a community. Today is all about community, and we really want to spread that message far and wide in all the areas that we hit within InBIA. So I'm going to go on ahead and bring up Jill Johnson. So I'm going to introduce her and actually allow her to introduce herself a little bit. And then we're going to unpack it a bit deeper. So Jill, I hope that you will join us up here. And I want to make sure, go ahead and let us know if you all can see us well. If you have any issues, just put it in the chat. We have our behind the scenes team, Lindsay and Josie, that are working with us. So Jill, I wanted to start with just having you give us some background on how you and your father came to form this impactful organization, what motivated you, what inspired you, and just more about what you all do.
Of course. Hi, Angelique. It's so great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. The Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership is an organization that my father and I started together, as you said, in 2002. We probably started working on the concept in probably 1999 or so. And believe it or not, the original idea was to start a fund. So this was way back then, before it was about funds for underrepresented folks, et cetera. There were a handful of instruments and vehicles that were out there that were specifically directed toward uh, what's referred to as minority businesses. Um, but there just was zero appetite for that, zero appetite. And it was the refrain of, well, one, you all don't have any fund management experience. And I can't even tell you now how many people I've seen who were art history majors and are running large VC funds. So anyway, there was that. And then it was, there's lots of capital out there. It's the businesses that need more training. The businesses need to become more sophisticated, all of that. So, um, not knowing any different, really, we said, okay, let's start an organization that can work on that. We started the organization officially in 2002. We had a $25,000 planning grant from the Prudential Foundation. We had like 5 businesses that we had identified. We started working with them. And initially, it was about doing work locally in the Newark community. We're located in Newark, New Jersey. My parents had a newspaper publishing business that had been located there. And so that was really how we got IFEL started.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love how you didn't, when we're talking about creative capital, we know we want to encourage as many fund managers and fund creators as possible. And I love how you didn't let the biases or the kind of naysayers stop you all from doing the work and from getting started. So, but how was that journey, starting this new organization? And what are some of the key things that you knew coming right out the gate that you wanted to disrupt in the angel investing community and system?
Angelique, originally, it wasn't about disrupting anything, actually. It was really about helping and supporting small businesses, and especially businesses that were community based and businesses that were owned by Black people, people of color, women. And that origin story really is rooted in my parents' experience as business owners, having a newspaper publishing business for 20 years, the challenges, issues that they had, the mistakes that I saw in hindsight after I started my career in the financial analyst program at Goldman Sachs in mergers and acquisitions, investment banking, and having worked with my parents and having heard their constant refrain of the business being their legacy and wanting to hand the business down. It was not a narrative around building a business, growing it, scaling it, selling it, extracting the value, and the legacy being the wealth. It was the business. And when my parents shut the business down after 20 years, I said, okay, enough is enough. They had not, unfortunately, they had not built a business in a way that they could pass it on, have anyone else run it, or extract the wealth. So they shut it down. And I always view that really as wealth that was lost, not having that understanding. So when my father and I started the organization, and in some ways, I do feel like we allowed people to tell us that we should not do a fund, and we'll come back to that. But um, when we started the organization, it was about how do we get more business owners who were like my parents to think differently, to think about how to build wealth from the business and how to create a business that could pass not only on to the next generation, but to pass on to someone else. Again, as part of that wealth creation process. So that's how we got there. The foray into the angel investing world actually came much later. And really, Angelique, that was in 2018, 2019, when after that long period of time running IFEL, working with lots of businesses, we had scaled the growth in terms of the number of businesses that we were supporting at that time or by that time. However, when I looked back, and really it was almost like this epiphany, aha moment, um, as I was looking at some old documents from when my father and I first started the organization, Angelique, I'm not even joking. I looked at those documents and said we could just take the date off and put today's date on, and it would be the same in terms of the problem around access to capital. And it was then that I said, we need to pivot. The focus of the organization work at a more systemic level rather than the focus being on the businesses and changing them, so to speak. We needed to work on changing the system that was continuing to not recognize the need and the value in and the return to be made from investing in these businesses. And that was how we, as an organization, got to the point of focusing on angel angel investing as a really key driver of access to capital.
So what were some of the things that you saw then and that, you see now in terms of, educating the investors who are really are that fuel behind the system?
I think that the education process is one of helping people to understand that access to capital is not about meritocracy. It is not about the best businesses getting funded, or that that's what drives the funding to them, or that it is because someone is such a great entrepreneur. To be successful, do you have to be good at something? Absolutely, 100%. Do people work, do founders who are successful work really hard at that? Absolutely, they do. When you look often though at who gets funded and who has the luxury of runway and having all of the trial and error and the pivots and the failing forward and all the things that people like to say, it's people who have capital. You cannot fail forward or learn from all of these mistakes if a mistake puts you out of business because you don't have any more funding. And so when we started looking at this, we said, wow, well, a lot of the companies that we were supporting don't have that early money. They don't have their own personal savings often, or they have already exhausted it. They don't have friends and family who are able to invest. And so we start looking at, okay, well, what's right after that? It's angel investors. And so angel investors have the ability to write checks as an individual, you, me, like we can write checks to whomever we want to write checks for. And so that was how we got to that point. And it was really looking at the relationships as the driver to access. I actually was very reflective at a point in terms of how relationships have helped me personally and professionally, and the doors that have been opened at various points, and how relationships help me to work through various situations, even that weren't good situations. I could pick up the phone, call someone, and say, hey, you know, what are your thoughts? How can I handle this? And then I started extending that to the world of capital. So that's really how we got again to be angel investing. It's again the foundation in the relationships that can then lead to capital.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of attending one of your talks, and you had this wonderful image, right? That many of us may or may not be familiar with, which was you were kind of going back to the billionaires of today in the tech industry and tying them back to the early days of PayPal.
It's PayPal, right?
And so I want to hear about that. But first, I wanted to see that thought with one of my own. You think of, you said it's not a meritocracy. And I think we have this trend where we say, okay, go get educated, get as much education as you can, maybe even go get your MBA, certainly get your college degree, and then that will make you, and then go get some training on to be an entrepreneur, and that will make you a really great entrepreneur, and then you'll attract all of this money. And yet, and still, when you look at, this kind of Forbes list of the 400 richest people, and you start looking at who's at the top, the Bill Gates and the Sean Parkers of the world, and the Mark Zuckerbergs, and they don't have more than a high school diploma. And you start understanding that the relationships carry way more value in many cases than the education I remember even listening to Howard Schultz one time, and he was, something I never knew. He was saying that his first investment, like breakthrough, right? He had thought he had a relationship with an investor. The investor gave him the money to buy the earliest version of Starbucks, right? At that time, it was just the bean distributor, right? And local bean company. And that investor, the relationship went sour. He lost that money. But through another relationship to the Gates family, he ended up getting the money he needed to buy Starbucks. And he said from there, the rest was history. So can you share like some of that just data and that knowledge that you guys have accumulated around how relationships, even in some of the biggest plays we think of, really factor more into how capital flows?
The thing is, Angelique, so much of that is anecdotal. And in resource-rich communities, it's not even, people don't necessarily think of that as part of the equation that led to this success, right? It was that I worked really hard at this company. We were able to achieve some traction. And then I had VC dollars, and the rest is history. The part about the friends and family folks that not only invested, but gave some advice, that looked over a legal contract, that opened a door and made an introduction and introduced them to someone else. That part of the story is often left out. That part of the story is not recognized as being super critical. And so when you look at entrepreneurs from resource scarce communities, there's no acknowledgement that that part doesn't exist. And that was the foundation. So it's like saying, we're going to um, take a child and we're just going to throw them into fifth grade, right? Like, never mind the preschool and the, sitting in a circle, learning to read and learning to engage with other people, etc. It's like we're just going to throw you in there. And so these business owners, when the narrative becomes they need to learn more, the learning is not the book knowledge. The learning is really around having the relationships with people who are willing to walk them through doors, who are willing to share their knowledge and expertise around the table, who are willing to go and get coffee with them, who are willing to speak about them when no one else is, when they're not around, and willing to vouch for them so that that becomes signaling to others who have resources, hey, this is someone to pay attention to.
So how do angels get involved in this part of it? Like you said, you know, one aspect of it needs to be around helping entrepreneurs understand that, your network really is your net worth, right? So this social capital piece, and not just I have your business card or I can LinkedIn you, but like true relationship building. And then the other side of it, from I know you all have activations in different cities, is on the angel investor side. So can you talk more about, how do you pull in the angels into this relationship piece? And then how are the relationships formed? Are they formed around cultural differences or, like-mindedness? Are they formed around special interests? I'm into environmental, you're into environmental. Can you talk more about how what becomes the trust spoke, sort of say, for those relationships that are you're helped to develop with the angel investing community?
Angelique, this is the part that's really tough. I'm just going to be completely transparent about that. It's tough because it is relationship building. There's no way to force that, right? If we meet and we don't click, we don't click, right? It just is. But if we meet and we start talking about something, oh my gosh, you like skiing, I like skiing. We lived in the same place, we're part of the same sorority or something that establishes some sort of common interest or, mutual shared experience or something like that, that can be the foundation. And I talk a lot about the difference in networking and being networked. And so many people will focus on, again, going to lots and lots of events, jumping around the room from person to person to person. And that works for some people. For me, I typically will go to an event. If I have met five people, that's probably a lot. And I'll spend more time talking to, two or three people. And so I try to go to events and really establish some sort of a connection with at least one person. Like if I've done that with one person, I feel like it was a successful outing. Um, because there's no science, there's no magic to creating those trusted relationships. It takes time. And it also takes you putting yourself out there and being a support and a resource so that it is not purely transactional. Now, with that said, I always believe in sharing with people what you're doing, what you're looking for, kind of your vision, where you're going, because you never know how that might resonate with someone. And they could be in a conversation, say, hey, I was talking to someone last week at an event who was doing this. I'll find that person's card and let me figure out how to connect you. You never know when that will happen, and you never know when you left more of an impression on someone than you even thought. So share what it is you're doing. But if you're going to every event and it's like, so Angelique, I'm raising $200,000 and, what do you think about writing a check? Are you an investor? Oh, you're not an investor? Okay, let me move on, right? You never know if you might be the person who can introduce me to someone else who introduces me to someone else, and that's the person who writes the check. So I really think, again, there's no magic to it, but it is approaching people with a curiosity of really getting to know them, developing relationships, and then you see where that goes.
So for the angel investors, that's more on the entrepreneur side, but for the angel investors, how do these activations work with you? How do you do that? And I ask this question because of course many people that are joining us today are entrepreneur support organizations. And sometimes it can be challenging when you're an ESO. You say, well, there's these angel investors and you're trying to use the math, the meritocracy math to figure out how do we get the angel investors to release capital? But really it's in a relational and emotional math to get angel investors to release capital. And the ESOs have to form a relationship with the angel investors to have that opportunity to even have those angel investors be funders. I'll give an example. We've worked, and I won't name names, just and the they're not on the call, so I won't name names. But there's an incubator that I was working through one of my entities, and they're an ESO, and they had done a great job of forming relationships with angels in their city to the point that they became the go-to incubator, the go-to ESO that philanthropists would go to and say, hey, we want to fund entrepreneurs, but we don't know anything about how to do that. We have money, you figure it out. And this entrepreneur support organization became very creative in the investment vehicles that they put together. Some cases they were guaranteed loans, but it was back just one very wealthy individual that was guaranteeing, maybe $1 million in loans that they were going to disperse across multiple entrepreneurs. And other cases, they said, well, maybe we should do this like an angel investor situation. So you'd be on the cap table of the business. So they were in a way as an ESO brokering these deals that the entrepreneurs they care, they love, they want to support, could take advantage of. Can you talk more about how do ESOs create help in that relationship building aspect with angels, and then also about how you do angel training so the angels themselves can be involved in that process?
Okay, I'm not so great with multi-part questions, so we'll save the angel training till to after I answer the first part of
Sounds
that.
great.
Um, um, what everything I just said in terms of how entrepreneurs would approach angels, ESOs have to do the same thing. It's hard. It's not usually like people are sitting out there, hey, I'm an angel investor, come and try to tap me to get involved in your work. That doesn't happen often, sometimes, but it's also establishing relationships. So I'm going to a lot of events, and other folks on our team are going to different events to try to establish those relationships and going to not only events where people are self-designated as angel investors, and that's for folks in that space, but also just to events where there are people who have the type of wealth to be angel investors. And so maybe there are people for us, we try to also attract people who may not be investing specifically as angels. Maybe they've never written a check to a private company, but they have the financial capacity, or we believe that they have the financial capacity. So we're out there, again, forming lots and lots of relationships. The way that ESOs are really, really well positioned to play a role is because you can sit as that trusted party between the two, right? Between the entrepreneurs and the angel investors. And that's not to play the role of gatekeeper. It's really to play the role of facilitator and that I'll call it like trust transference partner. Oftentimes, angels will not necessarily want to be in rooms talking to lots of entrepreneurs because, some of them feel like, I don't want to have to tell someone, no, I'm not investing or I'm not interested in your business area or what have you. So that can get a little tricky. But when you, as an ESO, engage the angel investors, when you as an ESO engage with the angel investors and you create trust with them, you're then in a position to say, wow, so and so, Angelique, we have this amazing business. You said that you shared that you're interested in investing in companies that are based in Newark, New Jersey, or you're interested in investing in companies that are impacting maternal health, or you're interested in providing small loans to business owners. And, here's a business that I think could really fit. Is it okay if I make an introduction? Can I invite you both to coffee? Or you just have an event and you make sure you make that introduction when they're both in the room together. So that's really the critical role that ESOs play. Again, I will share, it is not, it's straightforward, but it's not easy to build those relationships. And that is what does take the work for ESO leaders as well.
Okay, wonderful. So can you tell us more about your activations across different cities with angels?
Yeah, and we use the term angels. Oftentimes when people think of angels in today's landscape, it is early investors that will typically be followed by venture capital. That's the expectation. And they're investing in high growth, scalable tech companies. Well, an angel is really anyone who will invest in a private company, often again, that's based on some sort of a relationship. So we take a much broader approach to um, the term, even angel investing. Um, and the really, I think that, and I'm not sure the time period, maybe I'll say the last 10 years or so, angel investing has become far more professionalized in a sense. There are some angel groups where they're applying a level of rigor that is the same nearly as a VC would. And that's fine for their groups. If that is what works for them, that's fine. Each individual angel investor is different. And the types of companies, again, because it's an individual person. So the way that we look at engaging people is really first from this perspective of, are you interested and willing to consider? We don't even say do it, but are you willing to consider aligning your financial capacity with the entrepreneurs, the causes, and the communities that you care about, right? So if the answer is yes, all right, so come to one of our information sessions or a training session. And there's work that we do to just create awareness because there are some people you say angel investing, and they're like, whoa, wait, what is that? Or they think it's millions of dollars. We try to inform folks. No, it can be with as, 100,000, if that's what you have, 10,000, it could be $1,000 that you're investing in a deal. It could be 100. And we'll get to that scenario shortly. But you can invest with what you have, with whatever it is you can responsibly invest in an outside company. So our training, we have awareness building programs that are culturally aligned. The Making of Black Angels, which was our very first program in this space, and the Making of Latin Angels. And in 2023, we acquired Pipeline Angels, which had been around for 10 years or so at the time, which focuses on women and non-binary folks who are interested in investing in the same. And typically, their positioning is that they are standing in as the friends and family for founders, entrepreneurs who do not have friends and family who can invest. And Pipeline Angels has really talked about changing the face of angel investing. And I believe that it really has done that and upheld that value proposition.
I feel like what we know that there's a technical definition of angels, right? So I know I don't know the combined net worth, but I know for an individual you have to have a
Yeah, so
million
let me
net worth.
clarify.
Okay,
Let me
yeah.
let me actually clarify there. So that is the difference. And our president of Capital Access was the first one who I heard really being very clear in making this distinction that there is an accredited investor definition. The accredited investor definition is that you must have um, income of 200,000 if you're a single person, 300,000 as a couple for I think it's the last 2 years, and you reasonably expect to have that into the future, or you have a net worth of $1 million, excluding your primary residence. And then that was expanded to also include some of the Theory's investor certifications. Um, again, that is the accredited investor definition. And accredited investors are able to invest in private companies in a different way. If you do not meet that criteria, then you are prohibited, or founders, entrepreneurs are prohibited from taking your money in the same way because there's this thought that you may not have the wherewithal to discern, a scam that, or understand the risks involved. This angel investing asset class, to be very clear, is one that is a risky asset class, one where when you make an investment and write that check, you should do so expecting that you will never see that money again and not get a return on it, right? Like you should just expect that. And if you do, then that's a great thing. But that is the nature of this asset class. And that's why I encourage people to learn about it because it's fascinating. But the distinction, again, between an accredited investor, which meets that requirement, and an angel investor, you can invest as an angel in ways that do not require that accredited investor definition. So I'm glad you brought that up for sure.
I love that. And we have some questions coming up. We're going to take a little bit of a pause here to allow Charles to come up and share about NBIA, but we have some questions coming up around crowdfunding and how angels can get involved at smaller amounts. They're not accredited, but how anybody can invest. So we have some questions coming about that. And then we all, in addition to hearing to Charles, we have a wonderful poll. If you all want to learn more about creative capital, hear more topics like this, have more dialogue around it, then please take this poll for us so that we can structure our seminars going forward and our events. And then the other thing is, when Charles is done speaking, you all will have an opportunity to join us on this panel. So if you're in the room, I see some wonderful names. I'm going to be that don't let me be that teacher that's like, let me just start calling names here. But I see some experts in the room on this topic. And so if you want to join, we just ask that you have your camera on so we can see your beautiful, handsome face. And you'll have an opportunity to do that as soon as Charles is done telling us those wonderful things, not only about NBIA, but also about ICBI 40 and how that conference is going to be phenomenal. So I'll let Charles go ahead and take over. Charles, let me make sure I can spotlight you. There we
Can you
go.
spotlight me? Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Angelique, for the introduction. And Jill, thanks so much for joining us. And I can't wait until we get into this next session of the section of our discussion. We're looking at, how, strategies of how we actually increase the amount of capital that's available for our communities. Fantastic. So for those of you who are not aware of or new to the NBIA community, I wanted to just take a few moments to talk to you a little bit and invite you to consider joining the NBIA community as a member. Membership is core to our mission. Our mission as an organization is to empower entrepreneurial support organizations. We look to do that by creating an impactful community through comprehensive resources, training, and thought leadership. And it's pretty interesting on the conversation that we're having today about a lot of the importance of relationship in moving capital. And NBIA membership is based on relationship. We try to bring together practitioners around trusted connections, professional recognition, and advocacy that empowers our members. And we're really looking to do this to strengthen your individual work and your programs, looking to expand your influence and to advance the field of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial support. So I think someone on the team is going to place in the chat some links to our membership information and then also links to our upcoming convening ICBI 40. It's going to be April 12th through the 15th in Chicago. What I wanted to tell you a little bit about the NBIA community is that it's about 1,000 practitioners that collectively are representing about 20,000 businesses in just about every U.S. state, but we also have a global footprint, and currently we're representing about 20 countries outside the United States. And one of the things I just love about our community is the diversity of our community in terms of about 40% of our members are tech focused, 60% are technology agnostic. We have members that are doing deep science, deep tech, focusing on those companies, food-based entrepreneurs and social enterprises, and just a variety of service delivery. So our legacy is based in business incubation, but we also have members that are leveraging accelerator models, university entrepreneurship centers. So, I'm going to turn it back over to the main reason why we're here on the content, but hopefully those links are in the chat. And I would just encourage you to check out our page and the various benefits of membership. And if you think this is something that makes sense for you and your organization, please feel free to reach out to us and so we can share a little bit more about coming on board and being a part of the community. And then the other thing I'll just say on ICBI 40 is that I was just looking at our registration page and our speaker page. We have over 90 speakers that are going to be delivering content in 3 different areas around operations and programming, funding for your program, funding for your entrepreneurs, and building healthy ecosystems. It'll be a 2.5 day event. And if it's something that you can fit in your schedule, I would highly encourage it. I think Jill is going to be one of our featured speakers at ISBI 40. So let me turn it back over to you, Angelique.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Charles. I highly encourage anybody who is able that they make it out to the Chicago conference. It's just a wonderful community. It's one of those conferences where it is, big enough so that you can get a lot of information and make a lot of relationship connections. But it's also small enough so that it's just not like you're just kind of one dot and mix of 1,000 people. It's really a very community orientated conference. So I want to get into some of these questions with Jill. And so Jill,
Sorry, Angelique, you know what? I am remiss in not sharing with the audience that part of our startup story as an organization was actually membership in NBIA before the IN. Um, we were part of the organization. We originally started with an incubator model. We ended up moving away from that, but I was so glad to connect with you and to be brought back to this community because really talking with ecosystem builders and having the opportunity to share best practices and learn from each other, that is where the connectivity really starts in sharing ideas. So I too would encourage folks who are able to attend the conference in Chicago to join us, and I'll say us because I will be there, to join us at that event and share best practices, talk, and the problems are significant and large, and no one organization can do it all, and so we really all need to be together talking.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. I mean, yeah, I actually forgot that fact myself. I remember reaching out to you and you said, "Hey, yeah, I remember you guys back in the day. You had the
Yes.
name back then." Well, I want to kick off with this first question. Jill, you were so kind in explaining that, hey, you don't have to think about angels in this box of accreditation, that you can think about angels kind of in quotation marks as individuals who make all sizes of investments. So how does crowdfunding come into play in terms of the investment that angels can make? Like how do those kind of new rules and regulations make it easier for angels to get involved? And then also, I know you don't do two-part questions, but this is just my little caveat. Can you speak from the perspective of how ESOs can really leverage that in their offering and in their support for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. And this is the type of activity that makes us very, very excited. And it is a core part of the Capital Circles initiative that we have launched recently, where we're focusing in five cities, five geographies: New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New Orleans, and Houston. And where, when I was at your event in Atlanta, I talked about this because it is really exciting for us. The ability to activate people in the community as angel investors. And, again, I hate this kind of, it's not even bifurcation, it's like splintering of the market. Well, you're accredited and you're not accredited and you're just doing it. Look, it's angel investing, right? And anyone who's moving capital into private companies, you are making a difference, whether it is 100,000 or it's $100, because the entrepreneur who is getting that capital finds it meaningful. So it's important. Crowdfunding platforms are um, fantastic because people who may not meet that accredited investor status can invest in private companies with whatever capacity they have. And it's really predicated on having a lot of people invest relatively small amounts through a platform that where there's transparency. They do all the documentation and all of the, regulatory and compliance work, and you're able to go through those platforms and select entrepreneurs. You can even have your own investment thesis and select, uh, you know, um, areas that make sense for you. Hey, I want to invest in only companies that are in my geographic area. I care about climate. So you can go on the platforms, select companies that meet your thesis, that align with your thesis, and you invest in those at a level that is comfortable for you.
Well, that's wonderful. Dana Cosby has a follow-on question, and she said, are there certain crowdfunding platforms that ESOs can take advantage of? I know WeFunder is one that I've seen a few ESOs across the nation use to pull in angels for their entrepreneurs. Are there any other ones that you can think of?
Yeah, now here's how we look at this, and we think that this is um, an area where philanthropy, ESOs can really partner and align. We did a pilot that we called our Capital Catalyst, where we took in philanthropic dollars to invest and through debt crowdfunding platforms. And we can talk in a minute about kind of, there's debt, there's equity, there are rewards based. So there are different types of crowdfunding platforms. Um, but we selected a debt crowdfunding platform, and we started the campaign. So say a business owner was raising, $5,000. We put in the first 2,500 using philanthropic dollars that were given to us specifically, expressly for this purpose. We weren't taking other money. It was expressly for this purpose. We basically seeded that with the first 50%, And what we observed is the acceleration of their ability to close the crowdfunding campaign. So we actually saw some of these campaigns close in a week. One was like 3 hours. I'm not even joking. 3 hours after we put in the money, she was done with her campaign. So that's how ESOs can really leverage their networks to help to drive interest. Now, again, you never want to say, hey, folks, invest in this, or, this is a really great business. This is safe, invest in this. You don't, and you have to be very careful to steer clear of giving investment advice or investment guidance of any kind. Check with your attorneys, all that kind of stuff. But it's a way that you can leverage your network again by transferring the network that you have to that business owner with whom you have a know, like, trust relationship.
Wow, I love that. That has worked really successfully for many ESOs. Again, I say many, and this not that many. I think we get many more. But for those
Yes.
that have tried it, it's worked successfully. We've seen the ESOs network be able, their relationships be able to accelerate. And I'm so excited, those funding campaigns. I'm so excited to hear you talk about it. We are going to pull up, before we go back to the Q&A in the Q&A box, we're going to pull up Ray Jarrett. And Ray wants to comment on what he's doing with, again, I put in quotation marks, an angel, right? Really, they're philanthropic, donor advised funds, investors that invest in that. So, Ray, I'm going to pull you up. And I know you have some wonderful commentary and to share about what you're doing. And if you could take a moment to just define to us, what is a donor advised fund and what are angels like in that space? I'm going to spotlight you in a moment. And so you can kind of have that.
All right. First of all, I just want to thank Jill for your wonderful comments. And I will tell you, she has given you a one of the biggest keys is when you go to these kinds of events, the way you network is just keep it small and go there to see what you can do for others and how you can connect, and it'll always work for you. But I am the executive director for an organization called Unite KC. That's my great city in the background there. And it's interesting that I got involved with trying to work with nonprofit organizations first, but to really create an ecosystem where flourishing for your city, which is what I'm basically focused on right now, you have to have a mixture of both for-profit and nonprofits. And there's a big secret out there uh, called donor advised funds. And that's a way for you to take some of your money and make it tax-free. And the money is slated and is basically set aside for you to make donations to charitable funds and different things like that. But in recent years, and as a matter of fact, the last 10 years, there are organizations and corporations that have come up with a way for you to tap into those donor advised funds as a for-profit business with a very low interest loan that would basically help to fund your initiative. And I think it's very exciting because the donor advised platforms and family foundations amount to more than $1 trillion dollars. And there are certain organizations that specialize in offering DAFs or donor advised funds. I'll just name a couple: Fidelity, National Christian Foundation, Silicon Valley Community Fund, Network for Good. Those are some things or some organizations that I really have tried hard to build relationships with for the simple fact that if I can connect a company with one of those donors, a person with a fund, I know an organization that can take advantage of those new tax laws that help people to create those loans and those connections. And that's really exciting because that happens to the tune of probably $1 billion a year across the ecosystems that we work through. So it's something that you should really get involved with, that you should tap into, that you should build relationships along those lines. I'll give you one hint. It's not a hint, it's just a tip. But like there's a organization slash event that happens a couple of times a year called Lion's Den. And so if you want to seek out a way to get connected to some of those philanthropic folks, Lion's Den is a wonderful way to do that. And then, of course, you can always follow Angelique around the country, and she's always doing some great things. So, if anybody has any questions about any of that, I know I dropped a lot on you. So,
Oh man, I'll take it. Well, Ray has found, I mean, just what you're talking about, this DAF structure and the changes and the ability to use DAF for profits. As ESOs, oftentimes, I mean, I think most ESOs would agree that you really care about the entrepreneur, but you also really care about your community. You want to see your community thrive and flourish. And there are philanthropic dollars that may be sitting, angels next door, right? That might be right in your community, but their concept of investing is more charitable. So a DAF investor, right, invest from their charitable side of their brain, not from their return side of the brain. And so when they meet a business opportunity, a for-profit that says, hey, we will help you be charitable. And maybe, just maybe, there's no guarantees, we might give you a return to turn this one-time charitable thing almost into more of an endowment that can go on for generations. That idea is very appealing. Ray, I know the Impact Foundation, which was when one of your partners that
mhm.
you worked with in the past, I think since they started in I think 2020 or 2020, they haven't
Yes.
been around that long. They've already, and this is an ESO type organization, but they focus on the investment piece. They've already deployed $900 million in investment,
Yes,
okay, internationally.
yeah, they're actually trying to get to 1 billion this year. So
Wow.
it's a great organization. If you've got somebody who you've tapped or you've met and they have a donor advised fund, the Impact Foundation can certainly kind of shepherd you and guide you on how you guys can make a connection. And a lot of times, I'm not going to say exclusively or every time, but a lot of times these people who have these DAFs, I mean, they're just really passionate, and especially if your organization has a social impact or has a way to lift the community, they're very, very focused on giving a lot more because it's kind of an investment rather than a grant. So I would definitely take advantage of those opportunities.
Wow, thank you so much, Ray. I'm going to remove your spotlight and let you go back to enjoying the rest of the topic. And I am going to actually pull up Dana Cosby, and Dana's going to tell us about. I mean, she's kind of the solidarity expert here. She's also a legal architect. I'll let her introduce herself. And we have about 7 minutes left. And so I'm actually going to kick Dana a question, which I think she's going to like. In addition, but don't worry, if she doesn't, she can beat me up for it later, guys. And this Chuck Wolf actually has a question. So I'm going to give this to you as you explain yourself and what you're doing, because I think it fits right in. He says, in very small rural communities, less than 15,000 people population, there are typically those with high net worth, auto ship dealers, doctors, lawyers, etc. in these situations that are local dynamics where a failed investment, so in such situations, right, like angel investing, where a failed investment could lead to community tension, can you provide any guidance on the opportunities and challenges within small communities? So let's say even you're in a big city, but I got my friends and family, or I got these people that, I kind of can see at the coffee shop, they've invested, my business failed. How does solidarity play into answering that? And then I'm going to spotlight you and pull you up into it.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. So yes, Jill, great talk. I just want to make sure I got in. Angelique's like, Jill's going to be speaking. I'm going to be there. Okay. So, it's a great question, because one of the things I like, and I think that's what Jill was talking about, is you can't have solidarity unless you get everybody in. That's the whole point. And like she said, there's so many different groups of people that are in a community, and they're usually not working together, especially when it comes to development and business and entrepreneurship, where usually there are people who are never involved, and then there's the same players all the time. And the beauty of solidarity is, how can we all work together? So I'm an attorney, and so I work with the entrepreneur community every day, investors every day, because they do it every day. They're always looking for ways to launch new things and get funded. And so it's a constant thing. Now, how do we get everybody else who has means and resources and they want to support? It hasn't always been easy. And that's why I was excited when Jill mentioned the crowdfunding, because that was a game changer. Because if we're like, how do we get everybody there? And we navigate the SEC, we navigate the financial, there's so many things that are reasons. It was designed to protect people, but it was really keeping people out. And so crowdfunding was a way of protecting people and getting everybody in, but it's cultural. And Angelique and I talk about it all the time. Those high net worth individuals, lawyers, doctors, while they have the capital, they don't always know how investment works. They don't know the mindset. And so that's why getting them involved is important, so they can understand the culture of investment, the risk tolerance is one of the main things that investors have figured out. That's why they make so much money, because they take on risk. And so we need everybody to understand that game is the game. Risk is part of the game. High net worth individuals who work so hard to earn their money need to learn how to have a little tolerance for risk so they can make more money with that money. And so I think having them work together in a crowdfunding, bringing in people who want to put in $10 or people who want to put 10,000, it's beautiful for building that social capital, that knowledge of how do we support business owners. That I think crowdfunding is the best way to do it. And there's other, and Angelique knows, and there's other ways too. Crowdfunding just changed the game so we can all figure out how to bring everybody together. So it was great. I hope that answered this question.
I think that does. So basically what you're saying is, how do you get people not to have, like, oh man, I'm living next to you and you wasted, $10,000 of my money and that business I thought was going to take off, is getting everybody to culturally understand that risk is a part of the game. And that, just like anything else where risk is the game, hey, the stocks might go down, but they may go up too. And hopefully they go up more than they go down. And so it sounds like that cultural piece, that education piece that I'm sure Jill hits in her programming. I'm going to keep you up for just a second longer because we have another question. And I'll let, Ray step down, but so it could be good for him as well. So Ray, you can always comment in the chat if you're still around. But someone says but this is crowdfunding, so that's why I want to kick it to you too. So someone says using DAFs to mount crowdfunding campaigns would be a great idea. So he's saying this is, I only have their kind of Jay Lev. So Jay, if you're in here, put your full name down and so we know who you are, because this is an amazing idea. So what do you all think about, getting early traction in crowdfunding, because it's so hard? What do we think about that by kind of using the DAF charitable funds, James LaVille. So using those charitable funds to be able to kickstart this crowdfunding campaign.
So sorry, Angelique, if I can just jump in for 1 second.
Oh, yeah, sure,
that's
absolutely.
exactly what we did. That's exactly what we did with the Capital Catalyst. So DAFs are simply, a philanthropic tool that people can give. And you have to keep in mind, they have already allocated those dollars. That's why oftentimes if you can get people to think of using their DAF, it's not like, oh gosh, okay, now I have to, take this money from someplace else and move it. The money's already in the DAF. So all they have to do is say, yep, I approve this going over to this other use.
I love that. I mean, these are funds that are already there. Yes. Dana, we're going to end. We have 1 minute, and I want to end with this with you because I kind of call you my solidarity expert here. Being a lawyer and being on the back end of many deals that happen, both on the corporate side, on the investment side, on the small business side, you have a unique perspective that has really allowed you to see how relationships move, how solidarity can be leveraged, and what assets are actually out there looking for a place to grow. So can you speak about, just some of the maybe non-traditional assets? We talked about DAFs, but are there other assets like real estate that we haven't thought about that could be converted sort of into a currency that even goes beyond the real estate play?
And I would just say, you got to be agnostic. So when it comes to money, you got to not care who's providing it. They just have to agree with the investment objective. And so you can't say, is it for-profit? Government is a wonderful catalyst for launching things too. So you have DAF. You want to be able to be creative and pull in anybody who wants to support. And that means you need to be agnostic, like, okay, they don't have to be accredited. They can be my neighbor. because family is usually the catalyst. If you guys know, for a lot of entrepreneurs, it is social capital. It's your family that puts in the first money, your family and friends, if you're lucky. It's your retirement savings or the home equity on your house. So it's not, if we look at all the ways in which people got funded, there's all different. And DAF, it's just wonderful for DAF to get in the game because I know they care about the communities, right? So people want that money to go toward good. And so what we do is we just need to make the table, the pie bigger, bring everybody in. And there's already, just so you guys know, there's already people who are getting everybody's $10 in real estate, like Arrived Homes. I've been asking people about that. They've already taken the crowdfunding concept because it's been around for a little while now, and they're using it to fund all of their projects. These are people who are not funding small projects. They're funding projects all over the country and using crowdfunding because everybody now understands you can be creative on how you get funded, and there's lots of resources.
Okay, I love that. That's a great part to end on. So I am so grateful that we've been able to be joined today, not only by Jill Johnson, who's just an expert in this area. I just love how, you've introduced this concept of community as capital, but also I thank you to Ray and to Dana, Ray Jarrett, Dana Cosby, who joined us up here and provided their thought knowledge to us and answered some questions, as well as shared with us what they're doing and what they're excited about. We are 2 minutes over, so I'm going to go ahead and end here. You all stay tuned for our next one in May. Again, Chicago April conference. And in May, we'll be looking at creative capital readiness and how we get beyond just the back office accounting and get to what really moves capital for entrepreneurs, MVPs, AI-based, pitch review. So we're going to look deeper into that in May. See you guys then, third Thursday in May. And thank you again for joining us.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.